Now that I'm at GCN, I'm lucky enough to have a few shiny new bikes to ride. Although, to be fair, I did get one of them a bit muddy already. But anyway, I thought this was a good time to look at whether my bike actually fits me. And if the fit isn't right, does that mean it's wrong? And what would work better? I wanted to find out a bit more about the science behind bike fitting rather than the kind of rules of thumb that I've been using. Now, it might sound strange, but despite all my years of racing, I never actually had a complete bike fit. I mean, when I started cycling, I was on a bike that really did not fit me at all. Then, with the help of a coach, I had a position that pretty much worked for me, more or less. I had to change that position slightly over the years, depending on what team I was on and, say, the saddle, pedals, handlebars, that kind of thing. And when I had niggles and injuries, I went to a physiotherapist who did very precise measurements and we made tiny changes. But I never went back to zero and said, right, let's start from scratch and see what's the absolute best position for me on a bike. Our long-term channel partner, Shimano, have kindly invited us to their high-tech bike fitting centre in Maastricht, bikefitting.com. They wanted to demonstrate their bike fit technology, and I wanted a bike fit. And here to talk us through this process is Dr. Neil Spoon of bikefitting.com. Niels.
Good afternoon, Emma.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and expertise. Where do we start?
We start with a rider intake interview. So, Emma, as a first question, during your cycling career, did you ever have any injuries that helped you off the bike for a prolonged time?
Didn't keep me off the bike, but I had the usual back pain, neck pain, and I did break my sacrum in 2016, which was pretty bad for my left leg for a while. But I still rode, but I just changed my position a bit, I think. Yeah.
Second question. So, in your experience as a cyclist, did you ride mostly recreationally, or did you ever compete in races, or?
I would say a lot of recreational cycling, but I did compete as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit, not much. I mostly enjoyed my cycling.
Okay, that's good to hear. Any particular objectives that you have for this bike fit or for this cycling season in general?
I really, really have a big target this year, which is to win the GCN Presenters Challenge.
I can imagine. Who doesn't?
God. Oh! That wasn't my best one. One more go, haven't I?
Now we're going to do a physical assessment, which, Niels, involves, I think, flexibility and leg length discrepancy testing.
Correct. We're going to do a few tests to assess how flexible you are. So the first thing would be to see for the flexibility of your hamstrings and back. So if you could try to reach down to your toes, that would be great. So you obviously have no problems reaching down all the way to the ground. What I do notice is that your back flexes towards the left. So there is some kind of disbalance in your pelvic area. So this is the second test. I'm going to ask you to jump up a couple times and stop. And with this test, I'm going to check the alignment of your knee in relation to your feet and pelvis. So it seems like your right knee is a little bit inside of the center of your foot, whereas the left knee is more centered on top of the center of your foot. So the right knee comes inside a little bit and the left knee is more straight. Next test shows me how much room there is between your feet and the ground. It's a rough test to assess the height of your foot arches. So the higher your foot arch, the more support you will need from an insole in order to support this arch. Otherwise your feet are going to collapse on the bike, which could lead to problems higher up in the chain of your body.
Okay.
And the next test is the Thomas test. It's an assessment of the flexibility of muscles at the frontal part of your legs. So your hip flexors, your quadriceps, iliotibial tract. And it will give me some clues about how you are pedaling and what the possible limitations are for your pedal stroke. So if you can grab your left leg and roll back smoothly and just relax the other leg. So what I look for is how relaxed is the upper leg hanging from the table. It's quite relaxed in her case. I'm looking for how relaxed is the lower leg hanging compared to the upper leg. Also quite relaxed, so the quadriceps are also quite flexible. The only thing which I notice here on the right hand side is that her iliotibial tract on this part of the leg is a bit more tight than the other side, so it's pulling the leg a little bit towards the outside. So next test is a test of your leg length difference. I'm gonna bend your knees Yeah. Can you push your hips up one or two times? Yep. Now I'm gonna take your ankles and pull you slightly towards me. So here I see that your left leg is a little bit longer. I see this by just looking at the position of your ankle bone. It's, let's say, a 4 or 5 millimeter difference. Something we will almost certainly see back on the bike.
Yep, I think I've been feeling it over the years, my wonky legs.
It could be. I can imagine. This is a difference I don't see every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a big difference, and it's, given your history, it's surprising that you've been able to
ride
compete.
a bike at all?
No, but if you compete for, let's say, well, you've been 10, 12 years as a professional, most people would have to drop out beforehand with such a difference, because it will continue to create small problems which lead to big problems if you ride more than 20k per year.
Now, the interesting thing is that this is my brand new Trek in Mhern, which I'm very excited about. And I've tried my best to set it up like my old race bike, but it feels a bit different. And that's probably because the handlebars are different, the crank's different, the saddle's different, and of course the frame is different. So I don't know whether I got it wrong in my setup, or whether it's just that things are a bit different. Or maybe I've changed as I've got older and I can no longer ride the same position. So maybe Niels can put my mind to rest.
So first thing is to record her own position. I'm first gonna calibrate our bike adjuster with this small laser tool. So it takes center of the bottom bracket as a starting point, and then 4 different data points, or 4 different coordinates. 2 for saddle, 2 for handlebar. And that determines your complete bike setup. The center of your saddle is 158 millimeters behind the bottom bracket, and 608 millimeters ahead or on top of the bottom bracket. And the center of your handlebar is 421 millimeters ahead of the BB of the bottom bracket, and 585 millimeters on top. And we are done.
Great.
So the next step in the process is adjustment of your shoe cleats. What I'm gonna do is use these 4 markers to place them on each of your metatarsal joints, so the 1st and the 5th on each of your feet. I could use a marker or a sticky, whatever I want. Next step is to align the pedal axle just in between the 1st and 5th metatarsal joints on each foot. So I do that with the help of the colored lines on our machine. And I check whether the axle is aligned with the point that we would take. And I see that your cleats are forwards quite a bit more than what we would recommend.
So this is interesting to me because these are new shoes for me, and my old shoes, my cleats, as far as I could measure roughly, were 2 centimeters further back. And at the moment I can't get the cleats in that position on this shoe.
Okay.
But I have just got some fore-aft adjusters. So I was going to think about changing that, because what I have noticed is that because the cleat is further forward, it feels like my saddle is too low because I'm using more of my foot length. So if you think that I should use the cleat adjusters, then that's really interesting. How much further backward should they be, you think?
Well, centimeter at least. The next step in the process is the start of the dynamic measurement with the 3D motion analyzer over there. It's just a reflective camera, so what it needs is a signal from LED markers or lights. Those LED lights we stick on these Velcro sticky dots. So 1 on top of your pedal axle, 1 on your heel, 1 on your shoulder, and 1 on your hip. This harness is designed for people up to 2 meters 10, so I think we'll have some space in the slack in the cables today. Okay, you can pedal.
I can see already I'm rocking.
So what you see now, Emma, is the 4 main values which we use for setting up your bike. Those are your knee forward of foot, which is the old-fashioned plumb line. Then you have your knee extension, which signifies the extent to which you extend your knees. In your case, you can see it's red, which means that it's out of the range. It's a little bit too high.
So my knee is too bent.
Then your back angle, which is basically the angle between a horizontal line, your hip and your shoulder. So the lower you go, like you see, the lower this value will become.
So this is funny because I feel like I'm pretty upright.
Yeah.
But the number's quite low.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I could go, like I feel like I could ride like this.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the number's now in the red, but that's to do with me as a human and my flexibility.
Yeah. So based on the values that we were getting, I saw that your saddle was a little bit too low, especially given your ankling technique, and the handlebar was a little bit too high compared to the height of your saddle. So
Yeah.
I've increased the drop from saddle to handlebar a bit.
And I have to say, it feels weird because it feels like the saddle is really high.
Yeah.
But then I've just been pedaling for 20 minutes
Yeah.
with the saddle much lower.
Yeah.
And it just shows that you can get used to things.
Yeah. So the final step in the process is an assessment of your pedaling technique. It shows balance between left and right. It shows total power output. What this shows is blue and red arrows. The blue arrows representing the places in the pedal stroke where you push, and the red stuff is where you effectively slow down the pedal on the other side. What we can also assess here is where on the pedals you are placing most of the force. So if your cleats are set up correctly, you will be more or less centered on the pedal. It looks pretty good, particularly on the left, which is your longer leg, which will be more stable because the saddle height is adapted more to your longer leg than your shorter leg.
Yeah. Do you think that cyclists can improve their pedaling efficiency by doing pedaling drills and learning to pedal well, as it were?
Yeah, I think they can. For this, a good power meter which shows all the force vectors, etc., is a good addition. Like a Shimano power meter enables us to show how much effective force a person is producing. So having this direct feedback is really useful.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really interesting process for me. I've discovered that not only am I wonky, which I knew, but I'm even more wonky than I thought because I'm twisted as well. And Niels has pointed out that my cleats need to move further back and that my saddle needs to move up, which actually a lot of GCN viewers have pointed out from the last few videos. So they were right and I was wrong. Thanks very much, Niels. You're going to help me make the adjustments now.
Yeah, I'm going to do the last important step of the bike fit with the bike adjuster. So what I'm going to do is move your saddle upwards by a couple millimeters and move your handlebar down to give you a more stable and more balanced position on the bike.
Yep. Now, when I was riding in that new position on the 3D analyzer, it felt quite strange to me. And you said that's normal because any change obviously takes a while to adapt to. How many hours of riding do you think it'll take before I stop feeling like I'm pedaling in squares and sitting too high?
I would say that 6 to 10 hours of riding.
But it is an important point that any changes you make to your bike position, even if your position was definitely wrong, which is unusual possibly, but that it takes a long time to adapt and to make the adaptations in your body so that you feel comfortable on the bike again.
Yeah, I would say the longer you've been riding in a certain position, the longer it will take to adapt to a new position. So in your case, you've been riding like this for quite some time, so it might take a bit longer.
Yeah, and it's the human body is pretty amazing. It can adapt to most things, including wrong positions. So, yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for your help.
You're most welcome.
Well, I hope you found this interesting. I'm now a bit sweaty and frankly, definitely need a shower. But if you would like to find out more and see more of the science that we discussed with Niels, you can check out the geek edition of this video right here. Must have nearly finished by now, haven't we?